Again and again and again and again. Do it again, do it again, again and again. It's a shame.
Back in 2008 or so, my wife was shopping for clothes at the mall. And like a good husband, I was sitting outside the fitting room to tell her how everything looked good on her. It was a fairly ordinary shopping trip until I overheard some really unusual chord changes playing on the in-store speakers. This wasn't typical mall music, and my ears perked up in excitement. Unfortunately, the song wasn't loud enough for me to hear much, but I remembered hearing again and again and again and again, do it again, do it again. And I was like, okay, cool. I got home, I looked it up, and I was blown away. The band was The Bird and the Bee, an indie pop duo from Los Angeles featuring Inara George and Greg Kurstin. They had this brilliant vibe going on that was completely unique. It was somewhere between João Gilberto Bossa Nova, Space Age Steely Dan Futurism, and Devo. It was so completely fresh and familiar at the same time. The whole album had this incredible energy, and the only album that had come so close to having so much vibe was Johnny A's Sometime Tuesday Morning, and if you don't know that album, you're missing out. Anyway, The Bird and the Bee's self-titled debut record has an abundance of space, unpredictable chord changes, and brilliant melodies. It's so effortlessly perfect that it unintentionally just stands out from everything else. There's just nothing like it. In my book Failure to Fracture, I talk about how high performance is a side effect of effortlessness. The Bird and the Bee have this unafraid effortlessness about their music, occasionally fooling my ears into believing these are just simple pop songs for casual listening. But it's just not the case. There is so much going on in each track, kind of like Peter Gabriel's solo works, which offer new sounds on repeated listens. Now, of course, the first thing I set out to do was learn the weird chords behind Again and Again, and we'll cover that at the end of this video. And wow, is it a strange song. I have a real soft spot for songs where nearly all the chords are major. The chorus revolves around a 1-4-5 chord sequence in A flat, then bounces between E major 7 and A major 9, both very much outside the key of A flat. The verse also dances around its own tonal center, and it's wonderful. It has no reason to work, but it does. It feels a little modal, but it's pretty consonant. So in other words, there's something for the weirdos and something for the normies, which I guess makes sense because my wife and children also love this album. Now, I listened to the whole album while writing this script and just fell in love with every song again. I'm a Broken Heart could have been a 1960s pop hit. It even has a trombone solo. Strong melodies and adventurous chord changes, the kind of music that sounds as sweet as dessert tastes. The song La 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 has this kind of sad, upbeat feel that normally turns me off, but they pull it off in such an expert and fun deadpan way. Preparedness is the most dreamy of all the tracks, which leads perfectly into the closing track, Spark. Be sure to crank the subwoofer for this one, because there's lots of synth-based pad goodness, while Inara's crystal clear vocals just carry you off into a musical food coma. Now, if you have a couple of good loudspeakers, turn them up to 11, turn off the lights, and get taken away by Inara's voice. The fantastic production and the unexpected mix of charm, modern, retro, hip-hop, and the occasional F-bomb. And don't stop with this album. Their second record, Ray Guns Are Not Just the Future, is even better, if you ask me. Then they have an entire album of amazing Hall & Oates covers, and then another mind-blowing album of originals called Recreational Love. And don't forget to check out the Scary Monsters-esque piano solo on the opening song, Young and Dumb, on that record. But the real highlight of their discography is their album of Van Halen covers, which came out in 2019. Be sure to watch their music videos too, especially the Polite Dance song and Diamond Dave, which were both directed by Eric Wareheim of Tim and Eric fame. Just amazing stuff. And don't get me started on how acts like Pomplamoose shamelessly stole... You know what? I'm not gonna go there, I'll just get too angry. So when I started Make Weird Music, my hope was to shine a light on musicians that are just so entirely and authentically themselves. The Bird and the Bee sound like no one else, despite how many people try to sound just like them. You can't out-original the original, and The Bird and the Bee are the real deal. I hope you enjoy their music as much as I do. They've been making music since 2007. I actually missed the release of their Christmas album in 2020, but I can assure you it will be showing up on this year's Weird Christmas Music Recommendations. If you're a fan, let us know in the comments. If you end up listening for the first time, let us know what you think. I'd love to hear it. And we'll see you in the next Jaw Dropper episode. So, let's get into the opening track again and again. I have a guitar here. Not just any guitar. I have a Gibson ES-175 here. This guitar is amazing. Anyway, so the song opens up with this really sort of exotic, I don't know. It seems like it's out of key. It's just kind of ethereal. So it starts like this. Again and again and again and again. Do it again and again. So much tension. I just love it. I mean, we're talking about stacked major sevenths here. And then these first chords, they sound like just really strange. Like, what could those be? But they're actually really normal chords with the root omitted. So it starts out with A flat major, the one chord in this key of A flat, to E flat major, which is the 5 chord, then to D flat major, which is the 4 chord, and then back to 1. Totally normal. But it's amazing how a chord sounds so strange without a root. And then they go to E major 7, and then A major 9. Really just so cool, and it's amazing how all of this fits together. And then when they get into the verse, it kind of dances around E major, sort of. It starts with the F sharp. E flat minor. Stupid and perfect. I hate you, I want you, I hate you, I hate you, Then it goes to E flat major 7. They were playing E flat minor earlier, so E flat major 7 to B13 to B flat minor 7 to A major 7. And you might be able to tell the bass line goes down chromatically. So then starting here at B, which leads right into the chorus when they go down to A flat. So cool. It's like that Chris Cornell kind of effect where when you hear the chords all played together, they make sense. When you actually try to listen and understand what's happening, they don't make sense. But our Western ears will use certain notes to sort of pivot off of. So that's kind of what is going on here. A lot of the song revolves around this high F sharp. So the verse starts on... which, I mean, it sounds really simple, but chordally, it's very strange. You can't just take like a normal, major scale mode and apply it to this song. And then the second half of the chorus. So cool. So, I hope you check out the song. It is beautiful. It's wonderful. The lyrics are super cool too. If you have an analysis, I'd love to hear it. I think it's about a couple fighting, and they just keep having the same fight over and over and over and over again. And the video uses the same video sequence, just repeating, kind of like a deja vu thing. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. Thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you in the next Jaw Dropper episode.